bonsoir, my petit noir. So I think that's the only time they say noir in the whole film, Ryan.
Wait, but how did you say it at first?
Should we be talking about this? Are we going to get canceled?
Noir?
Oh my goodness.
That's what you said.
It's back. It's back. You're in your head,
you
Ryan.
said it. I'm repeating your word back to you. I can't help it.
That's cinema, baby.
Sonny Corleone was a Long Island tough, big eggplant energy, but it wasn't enough. Quattro lived in a belly, but he got one in the brain. My feet exploded, Nessie driving RoboCop insane. Clyde had a gun for fighting, Bonnie wanted one for fun. They was only 24 and 25, and she got 26 shots when they died. And there were squibs when they died. There were squibs when they died.
You didn't say.
Hello and welcome to season 15 of The Good, the Pod, and the Ugly, a film podcast where we traditionally pair films from the filmographies of notable actors and directors. But this season, season 15, we are covering the history of the practical and sometimes digital effect called the squib, specifically the blood squib, I guess, through its earliest films to its most recent films. And what are we watching today, and what are we pairing? Thomas, go.
Hey, Django Unchained, and we're going to be pairing that with First Blood, a.k.a. Rambo.
Yeah, that's what, 30 years apart from those movies? 2012, 1982?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Very good. I'm Ken.
I'm Ryan.
And there's no Jack this week, so this is your other millennial Thomas.
Zoomer.
Oh, yeah. The squib.
Oh, wait. Man, I messed up my own bit, didn't I?
Get it right.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. Let's rewind.
All visual and auditory effects this season are done by Ken Coral's mouth. Even the visual effects. Man, it really messed me up to start to have a bunch of technical difficulties at the top of this.
Yeah, sorry.
But Patrick, you're there, right?
He and Chaplain Amy are recording together today.
Oh my God. First of all, how we pair these films are 30 years apart. We're putting them through our patented temporal pincer movement. There's already a legal case against Nolan for having used it in Tenet. But Brian, do you want to explain what the temporal pincer movement is?
Yes, the temporal pincer movement is when we look at the filmography, or in this case, a timeline of films, starting at the outside in with the beginning and the end film, and then work our way towards the center.
Mm-hmm. And the squib itself, if you are listening and saying, I sure like Django Unchained, but I don't even know what a squib is. What are these guys talking about? What is a squib?
A squib is a tiny explosive device. It normally puffs out air. That was originally used in very early war films from the 1940s. In the 50s, somebody got the idea to put a little packet of red coloring in there to give you a little bit of spurt of blood. And then over the years, it's evolved to be explosives that blow the sides off of buildings or come out of somebody's chest with a lot of gore attached to it to give you the idea of explosive flesh.
And this would be chapter 5 of our ongoing series. Our first pairing was Revenge and Hell to Eternity. Our second pairing was John Wick 2 and Bonnie and Clyde. So we've jumped ahead in time on the early part of the pincer movement from Bonnie and Clyde to
82.
Yeah.
Next week. Yeah. So that's not confusing enough. This week, Django Unchained, 2012.
What else came out in 2012?
Well, a movie called Trouble with the Curve, to keep with our namesake. Lincoln. Too bad Jack's not on this one. But this is a big year for Walter Goggins, right? Being both in Django and in Lincoln.
This is the year that he caught wind after Justified. He took liftoff.
Yeah, well, it was The Shield, then Justified, and then 2012, and now he's everywhere.
That's true, but I feel like the Justified is what made him Hollywood's go-to Southern guy.
Yeah, I think that's when he got the hair plugs too, as well.
Oh, I didn't know about that, but that makes sense.
Yeah. We
And
love you,
so-
Walton Goggins.
And so with the Lincoln and with the Eastwood out of the way, here's some bangers. The Dark Knight Rises.
Woo!
Resident Evil Retribution.
Yeah.
Fuck that movie.
Zero Dark 30.
Yeah.
Love it.
And
Yeah.
Spring Breakers. All covered on this podcast from the year 2012.
All masterpieces. Wonderful.
Wild. That is hilarious that it was Spring Breakers because Jack and I were talking. I had a bit too much to drink last time, a little hungover. And I said, but Thomas is always at his best when he's really hungover. And then he was saying, what was that Harmony Korine movie where he was like practically throwing up through his nose? And I believe it was the episode I was not on. Spring Breakers and Beach Bum.
Oh, yeah, because you were recovering. Yeah, that was
awesome.
Anyway, I'll cut all that out. Don't worry.
Let's
well, and I
just
think
get
the
back
reason I
and
was
talk
so
about
hungover
people.
is that it was the day after my spouse's birthday, and we had a little bit too much to drink. We had a magician at the birthday, but the reason I bring that up is that while we were watching Django Unchained this week, the wife and myself, she asked, "Is that true?" After the dentist, Dr. Schultz, says, "As a German, I'm obliged to help you on your quest to rescue your beloved Broomhilda." She's like, "Is that true for Germans?" And so this week, I'm bringing you guys some German facts. The Pennsylvania Dutch are actually German. It's a perversion of Deutsch, the language spoke in Germany. The Dutch masters, though, like Vermeer and Rembrandt, were Dutch, but they also often include artists not in the realistic style of lights and darks, like Rubens, a Flemish artist. So, but Masters of the Universe is an oddly named Saturday morning cartoon and a canon film for He-Man. And we all know that the Master Race is the ultimate racing experience for the Android TV with 3.8 stars and over 100,000 downloads.
Wow.
My great grandpa told my grandpa that they were Pennsylvania Dutch. And then later there was a bit when it turns out we were just German.
All right, so Django, what is your guys' history with this? Did you see it in theaters? How many times have you seen it? Ryan, go.
Yes. I saw it on opening night, which was Christmas night. And then I saw it at least once more in the theaters. I've probably seen it 10 times or so, give or take. And I hate it. That's why.
We're not there yet.
Yeah, we're not at reactions. I was misleading a little bit earlier with the cold open. I haven't seen this a bunch. I've seen this probably 3 times. I saw it in the theater and saw it probably on re-release. And then this last week for the pod.
Nice. I saw it in theaters, not opening day because I had children. What kind of monster goes on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day to see a movie without his... Anyway. And this is probably my 3rd time seeing it. I've seen it once when my kids were older, doing a Tarantino thing, and then for the pod the other day.
This is the first strange fact, not German. Tarantino's first comic book sequel is based off of this film, where Django teams up with Zorro.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
There's also a graphic novel adaptation of just Django. But yeah, after the events of the movie, he goes out west, right? He links with Zorro. They get into some adventure.
That's fucking stupid.
It's a comic book, Kenneth.
Does anybody have any background on how this movie came to be and why it is so sloppily plotted and why Christoph Waltz character almost seems to be an apology for how many Germans and how the Germans were treated in Glorious Bastards?
Wow.
Well, no, but this is Christopher Waltz would have been in the preceding years 3 Musketeers, which we covered on this podcast.
Classic.
Horrible Bosses 2, not as a dentist. That's Jennifer Aniston. But he's reunited with Jamie Foxx at least.
Always nice to see Jamie. I can share some background on QT and the development of Django, if you like.
Yeah, I think in podcasts in general, particularly ones fronted by white men, there is not really that much information on this guy. So
Yeah, that's true. Well, so I can do the broad strokes. He was born in Tennessee after a bunch of unsettled years. He and his mom settled in Torrance, California, which is where Jackie Brown is set. In any case, he dropped out of school at the age of 14 and just went to see movies. When he was young, his mother did not care about the rating of the film. So from a very early age, he was in the theater seeing R-rated pictures. He started trying to write movies after dropping out of school. He eventually got a job at a video store, saw everything they had, and shot his first successful, fully finished film, Reservoir Dogs, and released it to great acclaim at the Cannes.
Oh, I was
Yeah,
going
he
to
had-
correct you because Jamie Foxx was born in Texas. But we were talking about Quentin Tarantino, weren't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he had help from like his stepdad or something, right?
Yes, I think he got his first film that was incomplete, but he did have footage that helped him get some actors for Reservoir Dogs. That was financed by his stepdad, I believe.
Okay, yeah. So it pays to have connections, kids.
Yes. It was a small, I think it was 10 grand, but that's still 10 grand more than I've ever gotten to make a movie. So,
yeah.
In any case, he of course became the enfant terrible. No, fuck. Oh, God.
Oh,
He was, the lightning rod.
that's your beat noir.
He was a lightning rod of the 90s film movement. And became kind of the iconoclastic figurehead for indie cinema for a time. He's very controversial, in part because
Is he still?
I think whenever a movie comes out, yeah, he's controversial, even when he doesn't intend to be. I think it is a side effect, and it's good marketing for him. So maybe it's totally intended.
He's controversial for cinema fans of a certain age. You wouldn't understand, Thomas.
Yeah. I tried to age myself up earlier. I don't know if you kept that in or not.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I heard that.
You just practice for trying to get in the bar later. I know.
Yeah. So after Kill Bill, which was 2001 and then 2003, I think, for the sequel, he started moving into this historical epic frame, and Django is his second film in that line. And there's a great story about its development, which I heard him recount to Terry Gross on Fresh Air, where he'd been watching a lot of what he calls Southern films, Southerns or Southern exploitation films. And he had Sidney Poitier over for dinner one night and was telling Sidney all about these films. And Sidney said, you know what? You should make an update of those movies. Of course, to Terry Gross, this all sounded very prestigious because Sidney fucking Poitier. But what Quentin Tarantino refused to share in that interview was that Sidney Poitier is also the name of Sidney Poitier's daughter, who is in Death Proof. And that's actually the Sidney Poitier who suggested making a Southern in the style of these exploitations.
You really should have done it in the voice, though.
Who? Quentin
Sidney Poitier's?
Yeah, no.
Wait, the dad or the daughter?
Mr. Tibbs.
Quentin Tarantino's voice.
Tarantino, this is a perfect movie. You should make it.
You could have gotten through that anecdote like in half the time if you were like,
well, so I don't have a good Tarantino.
I think you just
that was not it.
Up.
No, I don't have one. So yeah, so he went about writing Django originally for Will Smith, but the character of Django was deemed too unsavory for Will to take on, so Jamie Foxx picked it up afterwards.
And never looked back.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. German fact number 2. Schadenfreude means the same thing in German as it does in English.
So Django.
The plot is about a guy named Django who gets freed from slavery by a guy who needs him to spot some bad dudes because he's a bounty hunter, and then afterwards they become best pals. And the German dentist dude agrees to help Django find his wife, who he was split up from, who is a slave for a plantation owner played by Leonardo DiCaprio. And they have a early 70s TV show, bunch of business to sneak in there and get the wife, and bad things happen. And spoiler alert, or actually trigger warning, there may be discussion of sexual assault in this movie, and particularly how it's implied that it happens, and the character who is assaulted seems happy about everything by the end, even laughing and clapping, and how weird it is.
There is a weird aside, which I don't think, I agree with your criticism 100%. There's a weird aside where Jamie Foxx where Django tells Dr. Schultz, like, oh, they're probably prepping her to be a comfort girl. So the implication is that she maybe has not been sexually assaulted so far, and might not even have been yet, even though she's been living at this brothel with Leonardo DiCaprio for unknown number of months or years.
It is, well, in the original script, and they may have even shot it, I mean, there is a lot of sexual assault. In fact,
oh, is that right?
The shootout, the main thing and the main reason this movie is on this Squib season list wasn't even in the original script. After, spoiler, Leonardo DiCaprio gets killed, they basically just capture Django and his wife, Broomhilda. But yeah, they that was added later in the process.
Wow. That's fascinating, because one of the things I've always, for as much as Tarantino loves exploitation movies, nudity, female nudity, and like female sexual assault are typically not in any of his films. I can't think of any time that's been portrayed in his film. So it's fascinating that he had some stuff in there and then he took it out.
Yeah, Goggins was originally in the script. There was a scene with Goggins' character, not Walton Goggins. We all love him.
Yeah.
But his character, very obviously assaulting her. And also, I guess in the original script, he burns off Django's nipples when he's torturing him.
Wow.
All kinds of weird shit.
Okay, but that's
the final cut.
That's not like the shooting script necessarily, you're saying. That's a chapter of the script?
Yeah, early versions of the script.
Okay.
There's lots of shit in it's a Tarantino. The script was probably 300 pages long.
Well,
yeah,
I understand that there's also like an extra hour plus that of usable footage and story that that Tarantino's talked about adding back into the film and releasing as a mini series.
Yeah, coming to Netflix probably. Fascinating. I didn't know that, but I like the Hateful Eight one, so I'm excited about that.
Yay! Let's get more sexual assault in Django Unchained.
Well, no, I'm presuming that that's not in the footage, but if it is, then blah. Should we talk about Tarantino and how we all feel about him? Since we all have strong feels.
It's a reaction outside of the movie, so I will allow it.
Do you want me to get a gavel sound effect right there, Thomas?
Well, why don't you just use your mouth for the visual and audio?
So Tarantino, for me, he's my favorite. I grew up, I saw Reservoir Dogs at 13, and it was like, there's nothing else like this. My film taste has grown with his movies. I saw my first Godard after Pulp Fiction came out. I saw my first Kung Fu movie after Kill Bill. I saw and on through. So I love his movies, but that being said, particularly around the N-word, I haven't gone back and watched Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs in years because it no longer seems cool. It never was cool to me that he had white people using it so freely in his movies, but it doesn't seem like something that's easy to ignore anymore because of the way the world has changed and my understanding of race has changed. So that being said, at least Django, you have the historical context that allows him to put that word in.
To get away with it.
Yes. And the most upsetting thing for me, I realized several years ago when rewatching Jackie Brown during the pandemic, all of his movies would be fine without it. Some would be a lot better even. I think most slave movies would be more powerful if they simply chose not to say it because it's so implied. Everybody knows, you know. In any case, he's my problematic fave. I know that a lot of people think he sucks.
You raise a great question. What was Jackie Brown doing during the pandemic? That's a movie right there.
I would hang out with her, listening to the Platters, smoking cigarettes.
Thomas, what about you and QT?
Well, I mean, he's one of those old directors who's still kind of good and I guess still working.
Mm-hmm.
No, I like Quentin Tarantino a lot. I appreciate his, I guess, methods of storytelling and appreciation of schlock and of camp and of movies that, I think the opening of this film is a lot of fun. It feels like a bad 70s film, but not in a way that's Samurai Cop 2. It's able to draw the aesthetic and all the great things of a lesser film to do something that's greater. And I think that kind of falls throughout his career. I think Ryan has a sense that he has a perfect 8 streak, which I don't believe is true with Death Proof. But I would say that it's, unlike maybe the director we're going to talk about next week for First Blood, I think he's very, very consistent. Gesundheit, Canadian Gesundheit. Yeah, I think Quentin Tarantino has been very consistent through his career, and he's, I would say, probably consistently better than maybe even a Nolan.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Damn.
So you might be in the minority here, kid, with your opinion. Which,
well, I go way back with Tarantino because I'm the age where Reservoir Dogs came out, and then I was living in Portland, and I got to see an advanced screening of Pulp Fiction at the Lloyd Cinemas. This was like the winter before it came out, before it even went to Cannes. Tarantino was there.
Yeah.
Oh, also, trigger warning: Harvey Weinstein is a part of most of Tarantino's ascendancy. And I was a huge fan of everything he did. I think I remember reading the script when it leaked for Inglourious Bastards, and I thought it was terrible. And then when I saw the movie, I realized I was wrong. And I think Inglourious Bastards is the one movie he has made that is absolute masterpiece, 10 out of 10.
Is this you riding an axe with Jackie Brown for some reason, or
no? I like Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown's a great movie. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Off The Killing or what?
No, I don't have an axe to grind. I just think that subsequent to Bastards, I feel like that's the downside of his career, and I think Death Proof is unwatchable. I think Django, which we're not at reactions yet, but I feel like it feels like a Inglourious Bastards victory rap, but with slavery, and it has none of the great things about the plotting of Bastards. Is everything that's wrong with Django. And then Hateful Eight it's fun, but it's really long, and I'll never watch it again. And then I don't really want to get into Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I find it the most morally indefensible movie of the 21st century.
Wow.
And I absolutely hate it. And I feel like as a whole, the more we see of him and all his fetishes, whether it's cinematic or foot, there seems to be less there than maybe we thought as a writer. I also think that he is not he's a great writer as far as character and scene, but as far as plot, particularly the movie we're talking about today, not very good. And he is underrated as a director. I think he's a better director than he is a writer, or at least a plotter.
I would agree.
I think
an actor.
Yeah, we're not at reactions yet, but
I think the acting thing gets at. I think the thing with Tarantino is he's the most talented director of his generation, and he insists on focusing on his, like, I guess Wes Anderson, on his little micro world of eccentricities.
Yeah.
To the extent that I think to Thomas's point, I think he is super consistent, but if you don't like the vibe, he's not trying to get you, he's burrowing deeper into his stuff.
The thing with Anderson is Anderson, like with his new movie that's sponsoring this week's episode, the Phoenician Gambit, whatever the fuck it's called. But he's writing it with someone. He's not conceptually and actually writing, he is collaborating with people. And I think the further Tarantino has gotten into, like you said, his own little playset universe, the less interesting he becomes to me as an artist. I still think he's a great director, and in every movie he is so great with actors and casting. But the more I see, the less I think is there.
Well, maybe this is a good time then to talk about Weinstein, because I think part of what you're saying, Ken, or part of, I think, the implication that I'm taking from it, Weinstein and his deceased editor, Sally Menke, were the two like forces behind his work up until the point where you sort of start to tune out from it, which is not to say that you know, I'm not implying anything about you and Weinstein or anything, but those influences, particularly Weinstein, I think was trying to make him more and more commercial all the time. And then Menke just was the key to getting his films to be long, but not baggy, you know?
Yeah.
She has a magic, had the Thelma Schoonmaker touch. Schoonmaker?
Yeah.
Touch.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And without those people, and Weinstein, it's like I think he knew more than he's let on, but like Kevin Smith, their careers were totally, you know, these are college or high school dropouts who this guy comes into their life and says like, oh, you're magic, and then makes it happen for him and makes the whole world see their magic.
Robert Rodriguez as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so, which is not to say that they are not culpable. I can sympathize with why they made the choices that they made, but it doesn't make it excusable at all.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard Kevin Smith talk at length about how he didn't know anything about it, and I have to call bullshit on that. You could almost see, I mean, if you frame Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as almost an apology for not having done anything or said anything or acted on anything because his patron, Harvey Weinstein, was basically making QT.
Yeah.
If you look at it from that prism, it kind of makes more sense to me as maybe a subconscious way of he wishes he could have gone back and saved all these people. But he'll never admit that he knew anything also.
Well, I think he said he was dating Mira Sorvino, and she had an encounter and came back very upset, but he didn't. I think he said he did not ask for too much more information. Like, he knew something had happened, and then they broke up, and he just ignored it. But,
yeah, they all knew.
Yeah.
But we're talking about Django Unchained, which also has, like I said, some assault subtext in it that is very disturbing for how lightly it is handled, or not handled at all, really.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's a childlike reaction, but I agree.
Thomas?
Whether or not it's a childlike reaction?
Yes.
Oh, I'm going to stay out of that. It wasn't that long ago that I was still legally a child. Bryan Singer.
Okay.
Hey, this movie has 2 stars. What? Why are you laughing already? This isn't a fact. This isn't a German fact. This is like,
okay.
This has 2 Miami Vice actors.
Oh yeah,
Don Johnson and
Jamie Foxx.
Oh, that's right. Holy shit! Yeah, that is crazy.
Now, and then as a little bit of a bleed into next week, you also have Don Johnson in Rebel Ridge.
Yeah.
He's great. He's great in both films.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So one thing I do like about this film, not to fully go into reactions, but to talk a little bit about plot that might be skipped over a little bit, is I do like that. Well, I guess we'll go into a little bit of reactions. I enjoy that Don Johnson is not the big bad. Not because I think he's terrible actor. I just like the development of the story of
Yeah.
how the Waltz character, Dr.
King Schultz.
King Schultz, and Fox's Django get paired up. And then I think a different or a lesser film would have had Johnson be the villain.
Mm-hmm.
A better writer or plotterer would have looked at Dr. Schultz's plan, and this is the main problem of the plot of this movie. It's like, you've got to get in a character. We're going to create a story to get in there.
Wait.
That was a terrible
accent?
German
No,
accent.
that was
a German
that was
accent.
pretty good Waltz. I thought
Okay.
you were on.
Okay.
Okay, wait. How about this? This might break your brain a little bit. Maybe you just do this instead. Do a French German, or French Spanish, and the French dub, when they go to what I used for the cold open of the episode, where they go to the house where they have the fighting.
Yeah.
Instead of speaking
Mandingo fight?
French, they speak Spanish. So it'd be a foreign language. And so,
Oh, how
like
funny.
the Dumas thing, the Three Musketeers portion of it, that just doesn't quite make as much sense. But
No.
throughout, he's like Signor as opposed to Monsieur Candie.
Wow, that's ingenious.
That's funny.
So go ahead. French accent, French German accent, whatever's grabbing you.
Oh, I mean, his whole plan is to like, let's create the backstory, and then we could get in there, and then you can spot them for me to kill. And what doesn't make any sense is like halfway through this sequence, which is very satisfying when he actually gets the Brittle Brothers.
My favorite candy.
Little
And Debbie's Brittle Buttles.
Bring me back some
Abba-zabbas.
brittle butters from the store.
He pulls out a telescope. I'm like, well, why don't you just like hang out at the fringes of this plantation with your telescope?
Yeah.
Find the guys, go in there when they're asleep, and get the fuck out. But it has to create a straw man racist guy for them to justifiably fuck over and make fun of. And while it's pleasurable seeing it happen, when you start thinking about it, it's like, why didn't they just do X, Y, or Z? It for me is when the movie's plot falls apart. Luckily, it has Waltz and Foxx, who are both fucking fantastic. This may be the best Jamie Foxx has ever been.
Yeah, he's great.
So I think like first viewing, it's like very satisfying, everything. But then the further you get away from it, and then sometimes having seen it a couple times, these things start coming out, and they're really kind of dumb.
That's fascinating.
I feel like he's just creating these straw men characters for his cool guys to come into and fuck up.
Yeah, but that's the fun of these kinds of movies, though. In my opinion.
And Johnson's character is funny and kind of a blowhard, whereas I think DiCaprio's character is extremely well written. From the don't speak French, even though he wants everything to be French. It's like one of the funniest. It like sets his character up so well.
Yeah,
it's genius. But then also it's like, well, you're a Mandingo slaver in this thing, and it's like a stupid episode of the Mission Impossible TV series where like they have to have a plan to get in. But they don't really need a plan. I mean, Candie's not even there. Just go to his plantation where it's just Samuel L. Jackson and his sister and get your fucking wife. But they have to have this whole pretext so he can get away with all of his stuff, like Mandingo fighting because he wanted a Mandingo thing in it, and then like the dog tearing the guy apart, to have a really ridiculous guy whose job it is killing people. And then he's so frustrated by the dog.
This is a fresh lens for me, Ken. I'm going to have to cut you off because I'm just so excited because this is a new way to watch films. Because I was thinking about Heat, and if, I don't know, maybe De Niro's character just got a job instead of robbing banks.
Wow.
Huh?
I
Uh,
don't
He wouldn't have to die at the end.
That doesn't make any sense.
No,
I'm saying that within the cinematic world that he is creating here.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, these stupid plans Schultz has. Schultz literally has them standing. They have him on a hill looking down at a farmer and his son, and they have that great conversation about, well, I basically kill people and their corpses are money. And, it's a great scene, and Django shoots the guy. and it's a great scene. But they're far away, and they're doing things by sneaking up. And then because of the Don Johnson thing, he had to get all that shit in he wanted, and because the bulk of the movie takes place at Candyland, which I love so much of it. But when you step back a few feet, it really doesn't make any sense. His plan is really quite stupid and just a really flimsy pretext for Tarantino to do the stuff he wants to do.
Yeah,
but it's not very well thought out.
But also, like, Batman would have died a bunch of times. And the Lazarus Pit doesn't really make sense. Like,
well, yeah, the Lazarus Pit is fucking stupid. But to the same point, though, that's a weakness of the movie. I see what you're saying 100%, Ken, and this is where his predilection.
I didn't get to the worst part, plotting part.
Do you want to?
That's when they just sell them to the
Australian
slavers. It doesn't make any sense. They would just kill them 100%.
Yeah.
But because he's putting his characters through a plot that doesn't make any sense. His characters are stronger than the plot he puts them in.
Yes, I agree. And it's, again, this is, well, no, because it's a predilection. This is how exploitation movies in the 70s were constructed. You want to have a titty scene, you want to have a revenge scene, and then you figure out the rest of the movie from there. And that's why they're so middling, or really hit and miss. And that is the way that he intentionally constructed this film. That doesn't mean you should like it. But it is intentionally really lazy.
It's that like A-list star power and some absolutely gorgeous location shooting. Some of the most gorgeous work Robert Richardson's done ever. So it looks like a real movie as far as a big old epic 2.5 hour good, the bad, and the ugly type epic. And on that level, the plot just doesn't work for me anyway.
No, I enjoy it for its episodic nature. Watching it last night, finishing it last night was actually the first time I'd ever thought about some of the things you're bringing up, because I find it so entertaining from scene to scene. But last night I noticed when they get to Candyland, none of it really makes any. What they're doing, trying to put on the show for them, it doesn't really make any sense at all.
But it's so good with DiCaprio and the dinner scene. It's so well staged and paced.
He's incredible.
And then what Samuel Jackson, this might be my favorite Samuel Jackson performance.
Yeah.
So when he is telling Jamie Foxx like what is going to happen to him when he gets sold to the miners, Jackson is so fucking good. Like he's like almost like looking at the camera that you kind of forget. And I think it's only seeing it multiple times where that stuff starts like, well, they would just kill him.
Yeah,
that's dumb.
Yeah.
I
mean, just kill who?
Django.
In a movie, they would, but I don't think people just kill people in real life. Like I don't know, man. I feel like you're taking aim at a outrageous ahistorical film for being outrageous and ahistorical.
No, I'm saying that it doesn't hold together under its own rules that it sets up. And by own rules, I mean the scene early where they shoot the farmer. And
they should just sniper everybody.
No, he could show up in like a grain thing. It's like, oh, hello, I'm a German grain seller. You could plot, this is the greatest wheat you have. And then Jamie Foxx could sneak out and shoot him. It would be just as dumb if they did that. But they don't. They do it the smart way, the way they would do it. But then he has to create all this pretext. And it doesn't work to the degree that I don't see it, I guess. Because you're right, every plot falls apart if you pull out too many threads. But this one is specifically is sloppy. And I think if he had given it to somebody and they had gone over it, he really needed a collaborator for this to kind of have it make sense.
So, so I love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I'm not saying that we should litigate that at all right now, but that movie also has real structural problems where if you look at it, it's not a real movie. The ending makes it so that if you don't walk in with knowledge of who Manson is, then it's just a movie about nothing, because Manson never does anything. And so I think he values the episodic nature of his stories at this point to such an extent that he does not really construct the plots
Mhm.
with much care. And I think he used to have people around him who would be like, hey, but this has got to make some kind of sense. You know, I just love his, I'd watch him shoot feet for hours. I don't
Ugh.
care.
There are some foot shots in this film
Yeah.
of slaves.
Yeah. Got to have them. They always
Yeah,
do.
okay, buddy. Yeah. Let your freak
So,
flag fly, I guess.
I think one of the magic things that he's able to do with the movie storytelling, and so the first time I watched this film, I wasn't in the theaters. I wasn't blown away by it. I thought it was a little glib. And maybe some of the things you mentioned, Ken, were contributing to it as far as plot. When I watched it this week, I loved it in a way that I think from like the start, from having a song that has a character's name in it and is describing him, and then then later when we get to King Schultz, there's a song about him as well that comes in. I think that there's something like about the humor of this film which is phenomenal, and I don't hold I guess comedic things to the same plot points. Like I don't know, like Bernie should have had his head knocked off a few different times in Weekend at Bernie's 1. And by Weekend at Bernie's 2, I mean, while I do believe in voodoo,
Thomas, if you can't defend the movie we're talking about, you don't have to bring up film history to try and make your point. If you can't make it with Django, then it's not a point.
I'm just jumping ahead a little bit to next week. As I was saying, it's a little good, but there's something I think kind of fascinating in that we're watching the film. Lee asks me, is he a character, DiCaprio's character, Candie, is he a product of his time, or is he a psychopath? Not that those have to be
Nepo baby.
Not that those have to be exclusive necessarily. But watching it, we don't ask the same question of the dentist, of the bounty hunting dentist, Dr. Schultz. Because he has the ability to take all those people alive. It's just a lot easier to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And though he's an abolitionist, which is like a big difference between the two, right? We never ask, like, well, is he a bad person? He doesn't have the revenge. Like it's cool that he blows up a bunch of Klansmen, right? But he doesn't have to blow up a bunch of Klansmen, human beings.
Yeah.
And so at some level, the film allows us to not take these people as humans, but as characters. And I think there's something in that I think is a feat of the film to be able to pull that off.
Yeah. I think Django, to your point, Thomas, I think Django is supposed to be a black superhero. And like, particularly when they get to Candyland, there's a lot of framing of Django as this iconic hero. And I think the plot does curve itself into some funny shapes to make that happen. But I think he is trying to deal with iconography on a bigger level than just making a Western movie with a horsey,
Yeah, I think the plot part, I think for me, it's hard not to put it in the context of Inglourious Basterds, which also has a crazy fucking plot that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everything is of such a piece and everyone is so on board with it that I never really notice it. And I guess Django really feels like a sloppier victory lap of Inglourious Basterds. And that whole tone and doing his big historical thing, like you mentioned, Ryan.
Yeah. I think all of his movies are in dialogue with one another now. So Inglourious Basterds kind of doesn't paint, the Nazis are terrible, but they're cartoonish. And so then Django gets deep into racial issues and what Tarantino thinks of white racists. And then to your point, Thomas, Kurt Russell's character in Hateful Eight is a response to King Schultz in this, because Kurt Russell is the bounty hunter that takes everybody alive. And so you get the difference there. And King Schultz is kind of a softy liberal. Kurt Russell's a real hard-ass conservative dickhead. You know,
I would call Schultz more of a neoliberal, where he's like, I'm the good guy, and Waltz was very much like, I just want to be a good guy in this movie, but he kills a lot of fucking people.
Yeah, well, and
I would say he's better in this film, his character, than in Inglourious Bastards.
Oh wow, I
Hans
love them
Landa
both.
is like a top 10 villain of all time.
But he's
So-
I mean
funny in
morally. I was talking about morally.
Oh, morally, yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Hey, so this is Squib season, so I'm going to put in some gunshots here, and then we have to talk about the squibs in this movie.
Yeah, let's do it.
So here's the gunshots, rat-tat-tat.
Wow.
Yeah, you like those sound effects?
You did that with your mouth?
With my mouth.
Visual and audio mouth effects. It's
I can
amazing.
do it all, man. One thing about this movie that sets it apart is I don't want to say central shootout because it's toward the last third of the film, but the shootout after Leonardo DiCaprio gets killed in the big house. One of the most over the top, bloodiest shootouts in film history, and some of the, if not the greatest squibs ever.
Yeah.
Possibly ever.
Well, so to that, the physics of that shootout and guns at that point changed dramatically because you can use a body to block bullets if you're not Django. But if you're Django, you shoot through people. Like you shoot through one person to hit the person behind them, and it goes through them and like knocks out a light.
Yeah.
There are other squibs in here, and you're right. When people are shown in profile and they get shot, there is the explosion in the front and the back.
Yeah.
It's
And just
technically the best squibs, I think, possibly ever.
yeah. So
And there's head squibs. There's two dick squibs. One with an actual naked man, and then of course poor Walton Goggins at the end. There are tons of head squibs, and they're all practical, and they are the gloppiest. They're so gloppy, it's funny. It's so over the top, so entertaining.
So one of the things leading up to Django was after Tarantino made Kill Bill, he decided that shootouts were really boring, particularly compared to doing sword fights. So if he was going to do shootouts, there had to be some real over-the-top element. In Inglourious Basterds, it's all like 15 seconds, so just very quick. And in this movie, he decided to go with the ultra outsized squibs. And also the shotguns, where if you get shot from across the room, you're blown an additional 20 feet back.
Yeah, that's one of Jack mentioned. That's one of his favorite things.
Yeah, that's why
people get. So I'm sorry he's not here, but definitely when Schultz gets shot into the bookshelf,
or the sister, like
the sister,
the sister
shot
is
off
hilarious.
camera, like through a door frame.
Yeah, so good, so good.
Yeah, I think we might be peaking early here with squibs because. Although this one, it's so over the top that's why it stands out. It's not like we'll see more effective. And there are enough squibs here that it might make up for our next movie's squibs.
This almost feels like the last. I mean, people still use them, of course, but in a CG-dominated world, this is kind of like the garish last squib movie, you know?
It's like the end of the practical garish squibs and the end of the N-word, really, in mainstream movies.
Yeah.
Well, thank heavens for one of those.
And now he is claiming, and maybe this summer is proving that it's not true, but for a while he was saying that 2019 was the last year of cinema because the pandemic killed the theaters. But we seem to be back this summer. People are going to see some dumb shit. So
wait, and Masters of the Universe
is coming. Is that what you're saying? Are we getting that soon?
Yeah, that's coming out soon. Oh, in German fact number 3, there is no German word for gullible.
Oh, really?
Fascinating. I will say that until they get to Candyland, so maybe the first half of this movie is, for me, the most entertaining stretch of cinema. Just like...
Say that again?
It's the best. It's the most entertaining hour and 15 minutes, call it, that I've ever seen. Just the jokes are all good. The shots are amazing. The dialogue works. the scene where they go to shoot the sheriff in that little town in the bar and all that. That's just, I cry laughing when they line up all their guns to get him, all 100 guns.
That's totally fun. And at some point, I think Django should have asked him, "What if I was on one of those posters? Would you kill me?"
Yeah. That's where I think the superhero. It's a very simple moral world, and that's not. I still love watching this movie, but it every year it becomes less and less appropriate to cast. Not that somebody couldn't make a black superhero movie about an ex-slaver, but Tarantino's definitely not the guy to capture that story writ large, But that, as Samuel L. Jackson talks about, the reason why Jackson continues to work with Tarantino is that he's the only one trying to make these movies. He's the only one out here.
And his character and DiCaprio's character are probably two of the most interesting and in some ways surprising characters, maybe in all of Tarantino's films. It is. Yeah, I can't think of another comparable to it.
I don't think. Go on, Thomas. I'm sorry.
Jackson at the end, whenever he's facing his death, and he drops the cane, and just his ability to run the plantation reminded me a little bit of Mr. Glass.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or Willy Wonka.
Well, but he played one of those.
Yeah, that's true. He did. He was a great Wonka.
When the camera follows him from the dining room with all the white people to the kitchen, and like he completely changes just when the door closes, is really great. Just physical acting and not putting too much of a hat on it, as Thomas might say.
When did do you guys know when Wolf of Wall Street came out? Was that after this or before?
It was a year after.
Yeah. To me, I've always thought DiCaprio was good, but I think this is the movie where he becomes great. And I think he's been pretty amazing in almost everything he's done since.
Yeah.
But this character, and because he'd never really played anyone so toxic before, and that seemed to really unlock stuff for him. And then Pitt gets all the accolades for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but DiCaprio cries on screen 3 times in that movie. That ain't easy, man.
Oh, I agree. Brad Pitt gets the Jamie Foxx treatment and also gets the Oscar.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
DiCaprio, all-timer here. Everybody. I think it's Jamie Foxx's best. Kerry Washington is probably the one that gets the shortest shrift.
That was,
and particularly at the very end when they blow up the little prop house or whatever the fuck it is, no longer a big house, apparently. And then she's like giggling and clapping. This is what Jack wanted me to talk about.
Yeah.
That even in the text of the movie, what she has been through, it is awful just to have somebody, this dude saved me, so I'm going to clap and laugh as his horse starts doing tricks.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why the horse starts doing tricks. I know we don't need everything spelled out or any of Chekhov's horse tricks, but, the horse could have been a dick earlier in the movie.
That was
or something.
That was a joke, the horse trick.
And then I think everything after they sell him to the traders just feels like, as Thomas would say, a hat on a hat. Like that climactic shootout is so satisfying in so many ways that to extend the movie another 30 minutes and have the really awful director cameo, which it's his movie, he could do whatever he wants. I'm not calling him against, but he's not very good.
No,
his send-off is great.
Yeah, he's terrible though. It should be noted that when I saw this movie in a sold-out theater on Christmas night, when he blows up the building, there was a standing of like literally people got up and cheered. So it is. I see what you're saying about it being a hat on a hat, but I need that. I want to see that second hat come out.
Yeah, and I mean that within that when everything between when he leaves the house and then comes back is completely irrelevant to anything. It doesn't set up any greater stakes than were already there. And then the stuff when he comes back to the house is also great. Like Thomas was saying, like with the cane when he comes in the house and the D is silent, hillbilly motherfucker. All that stuff is super satisfying. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's probably my first viewing where I had some issues is with the Australians, and that bump. It feels uneven in the film, like you're saying, Ken, because like how Fox gets out of it is that he outfoxes them in the sense of mixing the truth with a little bit of a lie. But it's not all that fascinating, and I think I always bump whenever I see Quentin Tarantino act.
No, he's god awful. It's bizarre that he keeps
and it's so late in the movie. It's like Hitchcock in his little cameos. He didn't act, but as his career went on, he still wanted to do it, but he started having them earlier and earlier to get it out of the way because he didn't want it to be a distraction to the people watching the movie. And I think at that point in the movie, we don't need the distraction that it brings about. I don't know.
No, he's the worst part in Pulp Fiction. He's the narration in Hateful Eight is his best use of himself in a movie like this.
I think I can see what you're saying a little bit now, Ken, I guess, as far as plotting or storytelling. I think what happened this go round was that the first, like Ryan was saying, the first half of the film is so good.
Yeah.
Before you even get the amazing performances at the Candie house or the Candie estate, whatever they call it.
Candyland.
Candyland, thank you. Before you get Jackson and DiCaprio, that it just takes me throughout the rest of the film, and their performances are so good that I'm just like gliding into the end.
Yeah. And
I think the ending does need to be a happy painted sunset ending. And so we don't necessarily need to have Broomhilda's trauma or any type of injury. Like, I think we just, it's, well, I think the film ultimately works for me. I also think that it helps that I haven't watched Inglourious Bastards a few years ahead of it to taint it, like to try and compare it against something else.
Well, I mean, it's the more I watch Inglourious Bastards, the more I like it. And I like the weird things and the fingerprints, as we like to say, on it. And it's kind of the opposite with this movie. I think this movie is fabulously entertaining. It's 2.5 hours, but it's a breeze for the most part. But yeah, I mean, just the more I watch it, the like Tarantino, I guess, the less I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think I'm cottoning to what you're saying in part because the brutality in this film really does feel forced. Like you don't get anything really gross until the Mandingo fight. And then afterwards is when things escalate in that front. Whereas, and it feels shoehorned in to the Candyland stuff and not necessary for the black superhero narrative. Whereas in Hateful Eight, like that movie is fucking brutal and it seems relevant, you know. It's not well for me
that's a different podcast.
Yeah, for me it's the context is makes it all worth it, but I can see how here it feels strained.
And there's also even like somehow Django is the best gunfighter or quick draw person ever. There's a flashback at the end to let us know that. Which is fun. Like it's to me not bad writing, but just that the vibe that continues throughout the film.
Yeah.
Well, and it's sort of like the Sabotage music video. Is it great because it's such a good representation of some corny ass shit, or is it corny? You know, but if somebody points out and it's like that's corny ass shit, you can't really argue with them.
Yeah.
Although I do wonder if you have a sense of humor, Kensington.
Do I have a sense of humor? I'm podcasting with you guys.
Oh.
Do we want to do the Squib Academy Awards? I'll add some fanfare here.
Yeah.
Very good. Thomas, we're just doing best and worst now. The first 2 episodes, we threw that out. Do we have any nominations for the best squib in Django Unchained? I'm going with the first Dick Squib.
Is that the hick who was in the bath?
Yes.
That's my favorite, and I'll tell you why, because this time I noticed in the shot directly before he gets shot in the dick, he's still in the tub.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a quick shot. He is standing totally straight up and right next to Jamie Foxx, not looking like he's going to attack or anything. He's just standing there. So like there's a really terrible cut that had to happen to get the dick blown off shot. And that's what makes me love it even more.
Thomas, do you have any nominations?
I didn't realize we were doing this portion. I don't really like violence, so I'm going to say when the horse gets shot in the head at the beginning.
Yeah, that is gnarly.
He didn't want to do it though, so it's fine. Ryan, are you voting for Dick Squib or Horse Squib?
I'm voting for Dick Squib. Yeah.
Okay, that's 2-1.
There's a special shout out for a totally random kill during the big shootout. Just one of the bystander, one of the red shirts who gets shot. And there's like a pile of bodies, and you just see 2 or 3 bullets go into this pile of bodies, and there's like fountains of blood equivalent to when Jaws kills that little kid, just like streaming in the air. And those are anonymous but very crucial squibs.
Yeah, they're all great. Is there a bad squib in this movie? Or is like revenge, is it not applicable?
To your point, I think maybe he was more focused on good squibs than he was on good plotting.
Oh. Is there a bad squib in this movie, Thomas?
I wasn't like bad being unconvincing.
Yeah, like it just stands out as like, that's kind of stupid. I don't think there is. I think they're all so juicy and big and spurty. This is our new porn podcast.
And the sound effects are really, it's just so sploogey. And it's like all the shots are wet. Whenever a shot hits the body, it's like, it feels like you're wringing out a sponge.
Yeah. All right. I don't think there's I didn't see one.
Oh, I was just going to give one last fact before we leave.
Yeah. Hit it.
German fact, final one. The word Hun, despite describing the Mongolians as in Attila the Hun, the scourge of the Roman Empire, the British, ever so culturally sensitive in the early 20th century and always thinking about the Roman Empire and just finishing up the Second Opium Wars so they could sling drugs in China, applied the term Hun to Germans during War One.
That's because of the Austrians or the Hungarians. Go on. I'm sorry. Go on.
Well, over the years, Germans such as myself have appropriated the H word, so now I can comfortably call my wife, who I love, Hun.
Hey.
The Hungarians claim that they are the only true descendants of Genghis Khan. Their little country.
Their little country. Look at you.
That's why it
sounds
so
diminutive.
What's a
their little country?
They got a fascist dictator and good French fries. I don't know what to tell you.
Oh man, if only we could aspire to that.
Maybe we're
halfway there.
We can replace Putin's band with a Hungarian band.
All right, is that it?
Mandingo fighting apparently was never really a thing.
Really?
Especially not to the death. It makes no sense to have it just makes it was not a thing. If there were fights to the death, it would probably be amongst 4 whites who weren't. And the hard R N word was used 110 times in the film.
Wow.
The most ever and probably the last ever, right?
I'm trying to think if anybody has said it since. There's got to have been a Southern movie but 12 Years a Slave was also 2012, right?
Not to this degree, though.
No.
12 Years a Slave was a couple years later.
No, I think that was the last movie to really hammer it home.
Huh.
And I think it was too much in hindsight.
Well, it won an Oscar.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think it's considered more like borderline torture porn now.
Anyway, thank you guys. I'm glad we got a QT conversation out of the way and we didn't come to like slap fighting or anything.
This just sets up the need to address his whole filmography in full.
Okay. Great idea. Thomas, thank you for the German facts. We're glad you are back.
Yeah. Good to be
Hope
back.
everything's in working order.
Well, that feeder's saying.
Sure.
Yeah. Goodbye. Jack will be here next week for First Blood, which is the movie we're pairing with Django. It's the greatest disparity of squibs that we'll probably cover all season. That's next week, though. Gotcha. Excuse me.
There were squibs when they died. There were squibs when they died. Yeah, they made a big mess when they died. On a follow Walker down South American way, it got squibby, sticky, messy when they got there that day. Peyton lost his love and so he made a face. Django met a dentist, but big holes in little brains. Montoya's chest exploded, somehow wasn't knuckle gay. And there were squibs when they died. There were squibs when they died. And there were squibs when they died. There were squibs when they died. Yeah, they made a big mess and then they died.
Django!
That's fucking stupid.
But also, like, Batman would have died a bunch of times.
Let your freak flag fly, I guess.